I got the question over my Instagram if you should focus on sound design or music theory first, and I think it boils down to a way more important question we have. How to start with music production, and actually how does your journey look on that production path? I saw recently a graphic of a pyramid, which explained this pretty well in my opinion. So the basic of music production is that you have an idea, that you have a concept, that you have kind of like a composition maybe of elements. So this is something which does not even require you to create something. It's just like the director maybe in a movie, the guy who knows what will happen in that movie. So you will have to have kind of like a hunch of what you want to do, because if you don't have that, then you don't have a goal, then you don't have a direction, and probably the outcome won't be as good as if you have some plan with you. And it doesn't need to be like a super written down plan. I mean, it's still some creative thing. So you just should have maybe an idea. And with time, you will get more consistent with that idea. So if you look at established artists, then they don't usually go very far away from what they usually do, and if they do, then they make a new name for the artist thing, so that they have like this band and then they have this as a band or this as an artist name in which they do different music. So that's, I think, the root, the base of everything, so that you have kind of like an idea what you want to create. Then the next thing is the arrangement, and I kind of like the borders are not so super tight. I think it goes into kind of like arrangement, composition. It goes a little bit hand in hand, but you can create like a very good track without even doing your own kicks, your own basses, your own drums, or even your own leads. I have heard tracks which got released which had leads from sample packs in them, and actually from good people or intermediate to good people. So it's not a super uncommon thing. And I think this skill to make a really great arrangement is way more important than a lot of the things beginners or we spend time with. So basically, if you're able to have an idea in your head and translate that into an interesting story, then you have already 90%, which is required to really succeed in creating good music. And that's the important thing. That's kind of like the foundation of this pyramid. And if you don't have this foundation, then anything else which you put on top won't be as important as this. And once you are able to create a really interesting arrangement, the next thing in your game plan is how to create rhythms and melodies. So basically how to produce leads, lead lines, pads, atmospheres and all that, but only kind of like the notes. So the notes and the timing of the notes, the rhythm. Because if you have that, then you can work with a lot of things like sample packs, you can work with preset packs, and you can do kind of like your own creations with the work of others. And that's a really, really important point I want to show you also quickly on one of my tracks here. So this is a track I'm working in, and I just want to show you that if I open here Serum, I have a lead. It's from Vertical Sounds, and also love the Burn and Noise, Virtual Light and stuff from Lunatica. So you can do a lot without even touching sound design, which would be actually the next step in the pyramid. So the next step, I think, that you are able to transform sounds the way you want to have them sounding, or even create sounds from scratch. And honestly, I get a lot of compliments when I release tracks. Hey, you have a really great sound design. And I'm thinking a lot of times, yeah, it's a great sound design, but it's 90% not my sound design. It's just the 10% I added to make it fit in there. So in my opinion, you can be very, very creative without doing everything. And that's a very important thing I want to give you away in this video, that you should utilize whatever you can in whatever stage you are to get the best results you can get. And that means if you're in a lower stage, then maybe you want to use more samples, even leads maybe, or sequences. And if you're at a higher state, then you can do more and more on your own if you have the time for it to do it. And after the sound design part, there comes mixing. and mastering. And why I think those are a little bit less important. Of course, they are really important. If you want to release your track, then you need a good mixing. The mastering will anyways do a label if you release it for label, but you need a good mixing, obviously, to have like a good quality level. But you can get somebody to mix your track. So there's services like Sound Better, or you can ask other artists, and you can go into forums and ask feedback about your mix. But usually you cannot go into a forum and ask for an idea for a track, or people won't tell you how to do your arrangement. I mean, this kind of feedback which goes very deep into the creative process, and people usually don't take the time to evaluate it that deep. So that's why this is kind of like the least important step, and also it's something which not really will shape your music. Or did you ever stand on the dance floor and say, oh, that's the mix of Mindspin? Because nothing against Mindspin, he's a great mastermind in mixing and mastering, but the thing you recognize is usually the selection of the sounds, the arrangement itself, the story, how it's told, all those things which are more in the creative domain and less in the mixing and mastering, even if it's an art for itself. So don't misunderstand me. It's a really important thing, but it's not the most important thing if you want to finish a good track. So if we come back to the question, what is more important, music or sound design? If we look at this pyramid, I would say everything which is more towards the foundation of the pyramid is more important for your music creation. But that doesn't mean that you should like master the first level of the pyramid, like until you are Yoda of track ideas. I think it's more like an iterative cycle. So let's say you have established some kind of idea what you want to do, maybe kind of like a style or genre where you want to go in, and you have an idea about your arrangement. Maybe you looked at some good arrangements already, and you have an idea how you want to construct your track and what elements should be in there. Then you can start learning a little bit about music theory. So you can take, for example, a look into scales first in music theory. They are really important because they will help you to make your track cohesive, to make all the melodies sound in a certain mood in your story, and that's really important. And if you haven't mastered that, then you shouldn't go to sound design. But that doesn't mean that you need to be able to do some really funky music theory things like mirroring harmonies or something like that, because or building nice chords and stuff, because that's all stuff you won't need in the beginning. So I would say you go in each kind of like step of the pyramid, you go on levels. So you become like the bronze guy and everything, and then you become the silver and gold and platinum and so on. I mean, you don't need to necessarily have all the steps. As I said, you can still get somebody who does some steps for you, especially if you're a beginner. Then you can outsource more of that steps than if you're a more seasoned producer. Get better in cycles, but moving up that pyramid of importance, how unique or how much the track is yours. Then I want to lose a few words about where you should invest your money. So the first thing is I would buy a really good DAW, and I would buy the full version of the DAW. So if you, for example, you can get Ableton or Bitwig. I can recommend both. I don't have a lot of experience with all the DAWs out there, but I think Ableton is widely used, and that's actually a really good thing. If something is widely used, you will find also a lot of tutorials, like in my channel, which help you to learn this thing. And also you can exchange with a lot of other producers. But why it's really important to get a good DAW, because that is a thing you won't change so easily. Once you produce for like 1, 2, 3 years, it becomes a really difficult thing to adapt to a new DAW. So that's something I would really invest in, something which you can afford in the beginning. Better save a little bit of money and get like a decent DAW to work with, because it will determine your whole workflow basically. And it's the most important thing. And what I want to show you here quickly is, for example, I have here only Serum, then I have a Pro Q, which I could also exchange with EQ8. It's just comfort actually here. But from the function, EQ8 is fine, and the rest is all Ableton stock plugins. Even here in the Sense, I used like a lot, or almost only Ableton stock plugins, besides maybe the EQ here. That's the thing. If you have a really good DAW with really good interior, which has initially good tools to use, then you don't need much more. And that's actually my next tip. Don't go and buy a lot of gear. Buy one VST, and if I would buy a VST, I would buy a VST which has a good graphical user interface, which has a lot of tutorials, and which has tons of presets you can buy. Because as I said, you don't need to go into sound design in the beginning. And for example, Serum is one of those. Or if you don't even want to buy Serum, you can use Vital. So it looks almost the same than Serum. So it has a great graphical user interface, it has lots of tutorials, and it has a little bit less sound banks. So that's why my recommendation would go rather a little bit more to Serum, because it's a like established synth with loads of sound banks for Psytrance. But only get one and get really good at that one. Once you have your DAW and once you have your one VST, and don't buy anything else yet, so just use the stock stuff and get really warm with it, then you need to practice, 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 and practice. So you will spend a ton of time in the DAW and create music. So you should create like full tracks, and then you create another track and another track to get kind of like the repetition and to really improve in every area of making music. But the important thing is that you keep having fun with it, because if you lose the fun, if you're too hard on yourself, if you're too much comparing with pros out there, then you will lose the fun, and then with losing the fun, you will lose the practice, and if you don't practice, you don't get better, and you will never reach the thing which you want to reach. So that's actually the thing which I already said, but I want to point it out one more time even more. Don't compare to others in the beginning, compare only to yourself. So finish a track, maybe you make one track per month, or maybe if you're faster, make one track every week or every 2 weeks in the beginning. And then after 10 tracks, you listen and compare your first with your 10th track, and you should see a difference. And what really can help you on your journey, and it's a bit boring, and I made a video about this, which I will link up here, is learn to reference. If you learn to reference and to read professional tracks, then you have a lot of tools in your hand to improve your music. So for example, you could reference the arrangement and then copy the arrangement in the beginning until you understand what it does, and you can deviate from this and create your own arrangement.